What is up guys, and I hope you're well. Today we are taking a look at, of course, r/entitled parents. If you do enjoy today's stories, please would you consider hitting that like, the subscribe button and maybe that notification bell. As always, I cannot express how much of a difference it makes to a channel like mine. As I say, I dropped off the videos recently, so obviously my channel has taken a big spike downwards, but I know with your help we can get it back up there. And with that being said, let's get started. Our first story is from Handsome Be Wonderful. You ruined Christmas. An actual real story, so nothing too crazy. A few years ago now, I worked for a UK video game store franchise called Game as a customer assistant. I took great pride in my work, ensuring customers always got the best deal I could get for them and often saving hundreds of pounds, often to the annoyance of my manager. Generally, I love dealing with customers. However, at Christmas, they got nasty. One time I remember on Christmas Eve 2007, 24th of December, an EM came in asking for a Wii. The Wii at the time was the must-own console and extremely hard to get hold of. I explained to the customer they were out of stock and we wouldn't be getting any in today. However, I offered to take her name and number and add it to the list to give her a call when some did come in. EM said, "That's not good enough." I said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. I know the other game stores in the city are out of stock too, and I've been for a couple of weeks now." "I have my son on the phone. Explain to him why you've ruined his Christmas." I so wanted, and would have improved this story, to tell him that he wouldn't be getting a Wii because his stupid EM had no foresight to buy it early despite it being all over the news about stock issues. However, I just told her it wasn't appropriate for me to take her phone. She eventually left and swore never to return. I didn't put her name on the list. A few days later, she came on one of my days off, asking why no one had called her. Our next story is from Ghetto Duck. Babysit our kid on Christmas for free. Effing how these parents out here are wildin' lately. So here's the story. W, hot, sexy, beautiful, very much pregnant wife, relevant. M, me, the husband staring at them confused. EM, annoyed entitled mother, also boss. ED, entitled dad, also boss. So my wife and I have been married for almost 2 years now. We split the holidays because our family live in separate cities. These people know that. This year is my wife's family year for Christmas. We planned it with our respective jobs, asked off and both got approved. Only problem, my wife is a nanny. She works hourly and she gets paid for time ahead of time. She's pregnant and the poor woman has days when my future child really just knocks it out of her. This results in her owing time, which is fair, we don't mind that. However, this was just too far. So they invited us over for dinner and this is how it went. EM said, "Ghetto Duck and Miss Ghetto Duck, we invited you and we need to ask you something." I rolled my eyes. I knew they were going to pull something. They've been notoriously self-absorbed the entirety of my wife's working relationship with them, and these people were friends that used to go to our church. So me and my wife were looking at them and waiting for them to ask whatever it was, and she looked at us with a bright ass smile on her face. EM said, "You can't have work off anymore. We need you to watch Entitled Child on Christmas." I laughed and then saw that they were dead ass serious. My wife looked at me confused and shook her head, explaining we already bought the plane tickets to go and we're not able to get out of this. That's when the kicker comes in. Entitled Dad says, "That's the thing, you can't say no. You owe us ours. We're going to my boss's Christmas party. There are no kids that will be there, meaning we'd work it for free. Granted we wouldn't do it for money anyway, but I'm damn sure not doing it for free on Christmas." She looked at me and I could tell she felt uncomfortable. My wife doesn't do well talking up for herself and people often try to abuse that. None more than these people. So I shake my head no and remind them that they already approved this. We aren't doing this. They don't take no for an answer. ED said, "Entitled Child, come out here and tell Mrs. Ghetto Duck how you're excited to spend Christmas with her." So in walks this child, which granted is a very big product of her environment. She's 4 and I can't really blame her for how she behaves when her parents act like this. Entitled Child says, "Hi Miss Ghetto Duck, Daddy said we would spend Christmas together. I'm excited." So now we have 2 parents trying to force this and a child I had to crush the dreams of. Basically what it came down to was me pushing my plate ahead of me and look at them in the eye. "You either stop this nonsense now or she walks. For what you're paying her, you know you won't find someone else." We leave the house and my wife thanks me in the car because that was stressful for her and the baby, and they text us and tried to call our bluff. It was basically a do it or else you're jobless this Christmas. So she hit them back with a Happy New Year because she was pissed at this point and we didn't want to talk to them. However, today was her shift and they messaged her last night asking if she was still coming in. So all in all, just work for classy people who aren't stupid. The next story is from Free the P. Where'd you get these names? EM leaves child at daycare while she goes Christmas shopping. I work at a childcare facility and we're open from 8:30 to 4:30. We have strict rules about these times. 4:30 is supposed to be the last possible time you can pick up your child, not the time you start showing up. We have a policy to charge for every 15 minutes past 4:30, but we tend to be nice and not do that if it's a one-off thing, and if you're there before 5. We have a child with an EM who is late a lot. This year she has had to pay late fees over a dozen times and always fights it saying, "I pay you to watch my son, don't I?" Anyway, this morning she comes and drops off her boy and comes up to me and says, "I'm going to be late to pick him up today." Usually with parents that means they will be showing up 10 to 15 minutes after 4:30, which we accept, but I knew this lady wouldn't be doing that. Sure enough, I ask her what time she expects she'll get here, and she says hopefully 6:30, but no later than 7. I have to do some Christmas shopping. I was shocked. She'd been told again and again 4:30 is the latest she can pick him up. I replied that this isn't going to be possible. He needs to be picked up by 4:30. Later than that and you're charged. After 5:30 we'll call the police if we can't get hold of you. She answers with, "I have urgent Christmas shopping to do today, so you'll just need to watch him." I reiterate the policy we have and she says, "You've said yourself my son is a great kid. You should feel lucky that you get to spend time with him. I thought you work here because you love kids, or do you just do it for the money?" I'm starting to rage inside, but I can't yell in front of the kids, so I smile, tell her again the policy we have on pickups, and tell her to speak to the manager if she doesn't believe me. She laughs and says, "Just do what I pay you for and watch him," and walks off. I tell my manager, who calls her after lunch, to remind her that she needs to pick up her boy by 4:30 at the latest. Apparently she laughs it off and says she'll pick him up, so we hope that's that. 4:30 rolls around and her son is now the only kid here. We keep him entertained while we clean up. She has called but doesn't answer. By 5 my manager calls saying if someone doesn't answer the phone or come pick him up, we have to call the police. We try emergency contact numbers, but one is a friend who is out of town for the holidays and the father doesn't pick up. We wait a bit because having the police here will upset the boy, but by 5:30 we don't know what else to do. I call once more and she finally answers. When I tell her she needs to come collect her son now, the conversation goes like this. EM said, "I told you I was going to be late." And I say, "And I told you that wasn't acceptable. You're lucky we haven't called the police already." "Don't threaten me. You knew I was going to be late. I told you I needed to do Christmas shopping." "That is no excuse. You need to come get him right now or have to call the police so they can bring a social worker down to collect him." The EM then says, "You really know how to ruin Christmas, you bitch. I just wanted to get some presents. Just come pick him up now." "Fine, you're the laziest teacher ever. You don't even want to look after one child." With that she hangs up, and at around 5:45 she pulls up. The manager tells her this was serious and she'll have to take it to the board to see if they can take it further, report her to child services, or refuse a place here for her child next year. EM loses it, saying we've ruined Christmas and that she should have us all fired, and that her family is used to VIP treatment in this town. Her husband makes a lot of money, and that she is disgusted that we don't understand that. To top it off, when asked to leave, she grabs a £10 note out of her purse and says, "Here, I paid the extra time, you miserable bunch of done. Get over it. He's an angel to look after." Hopefully the board take action against her, because she is unbelievable. Our next story is from Unicorn Sponge. My mother is stealing my house. This is very difficult for me to write, but I have to get it out since it has now reached a point where I feel it's destroyed me. Backstory. My mother has had multiple points of trauma in her life. This includes a family member sexually assaulting her in the worst way at a young age, and her first boyfriend repeating this not many years after. No one in the family believed her either time it happened. I'm hoping it was this, and not that they implied it was her fault. After this she dropped out of school, got pregnant with me during a one-night stand, and experimented with different drugs, the most prominent being meth. After this, more trauma occurred, when she got into a very near fatal car crash, sustaining multiple head injuries. This accident happened when I was 10 and I was living with my grandparents. When my grandmother died, I had a big decision my 26-year-old brain had to make. Do I take over the mortgage of her house, or do I let the mortgage lender take possession of it? I knew what my mum wanted. She didn't hide it well, and I also hated to leave the house I spent the majority of my childhood in, the state that my mother and grandmother had left it in. This was the beginning of the end. During the process of refinancing the mortgage, my mother insisted that her name be kept on the deed. Not the mortgage, just the deed. I questioned this, then questioned it again when the new lender I had chosen made a comment that it was unusual, but I shrugged it off. I had more important stuff to worry about, like making the house actually habitable. Unfortunately, something goes wrong with my grandmother's life insurance, and I had to only get a quarter of what I'm supposed to. This did not happen to my mother, although she did spend a large chunk on funeral expenses. Whatever, I think I have money in my savings, so I forced my SO to come with me, roll up my sleeves and get to work on the house. There is pet damage in 90% of the house, so new carpets, new lino in the kitchen, new paint on every wall, a new wall, new fridge, new washing machine, new toilet. Keep in mind when I say new, I mean I bought at thrift or restores as often as possible. I even found a warehouse to buy carpet at a discount and a friend to teach me how to install it. I repaired electrical outlets, holes in the walls, gutters and riding lawnmower that was in the garage. I worked hard to create an environment that I could be proud to call home. Then it happened. When my mum moved into her house, she immediately spent hundreds of dollars on brand new furniture for her dining room and living room. I scolded her a bit, telling her how I was paying a fraction of what she was by going to thrift stores. She gave me excuses such as they don't have any in her area, 30 minutes away, or how she wanted the house to feel like home. I just shook my head and said I thought it was a bad move. After her GF moved out, my mum had to get a roommate quick and ended up with one that would scream at her in the middle of the night while she was asleep, waking her up in terror, and another who would lock the cat outside at night in the winter. While still grieving the loss of her grandmother, she kicked them out. Now, however, she can't afford her mortgage, so I start paying her cell phone bill. I'm a little miffed because this means I'll be paying off her phone that was supposed to be my Christmas present. My mum did one of those, free with a 2-year contract, and blah amount a month. For some reason, a bill that begins at $100 a month quickly grows to $250. I eventually get the information to access the account online, and I find she's added a third line for a friend who needed a phone. I asked her why she didn't give me a heads up, let alone ask since I was the one paying now. She responded with a simple, "Sorry, I forgot," because I wasn't an authorised user. I couldn't remove a third line and my mum continued to forget until I stopped paying the bill. Time passes and she starts asking me for grocery money. The first time I give her a small sum and tells her that she needs to get a better job. She doesn't want to because she's working at a university and will get a discount there if she ever decided to go back to school. Coming from someone who, remember, didn't even finish high school, she continues to ask me for money every other month or so until she gets a better job. Then her pipes start to leak and her house gets infested with fleas and her cat dies, so I start to help out again until I notice something odd when checking my account balances. She took $300 from me without asking. That's stealing. After everything I've done, she stole $300 from me. Sigh. I confront her about one of her visits as she's leaving. She said she was going to tell me that day, even though she hadn't, and that she was sorry and that she wouldn't do it again. I told her I knew she wasn't going to because I changed all my information. She cried and said that she was sorry that I had to do that, but she understood. It was less than a month before she was asking for money to help finish working on her pipes. I gave it to her. Then my car started breaking down. I'd had it for 12 years and a friend found a better car for only $1,000 more than the repairs would have been. So I buy it with a pretty modest auto loan to cover what I can't afford. The thing is, after this, I tell my mum that I have less than $100 in my savings and I can't help her anymore. At all. Now I had a little less than $500, but honestly, she had no right to know that. So what does she say when I tell her this? Why would you buy a car when you can't afford it? I tell her I could afford, I just can't afford to give her money anymore. That I needed a new car and it would have cost me as much to get repairs on my old car since I wouldn't have been able to get a loan for that. So this is when it finally sinks in that I'm not going to be giving my mum any more money. 4 more months pass and she can no longer afford to pay for home internet or keep up with a mortgage. I can tell her physical and mental health are starting to deteriorate and feeling somewhat responsible. Her depression and negativity are starting to seep into me and I, for whatever reason, stop taking my antidepressants and start smoking an ungodly amount of marijuana. Does anyone remember that part where my mother demanding that her name be kept on the deed? I sure didn't. Not until I'm ranting to a friend who terrifyingly points out that if my mother defaults on a mortgage, they can use my house as collateral. They can attach what she owes to my property. I start to panic, as in, I have a panic attack that lasts for 4 hours. My friend freaks out and takes me to ER. I started hyperventilating to the point where I could barely speak. And in case you were wondering, I don't have health insurance. Great. I try talking to my mum multiple times about taking her name off the deed. I tell her she doesn't need it to be able to live there. I tell her she's shown she has a history of making bad financial decisions. I finally tell her if she doesn't, she could lose both houses. But no, she refuses. God knows why she refuses again and again and again. Not only refusing, but feeling disrespected and attacked, believing she has the right to this house, that I'm trying to take what little she has left of what my grandmother left behind, saying that I'm trying to hold power over her or lock her out my life or something else along those lines. I am in full panic mode now. I can't do anything without her permission if her name is on the deed. I dropped £20 in 3 weeks, starting at £130, and I start to become suicidal. I almost end up in ER a second time. My SOM roommate eventually convinced me to start taking antidepressants again, and things get a little better after that. I gain back some of the weight I lost, and suicidal thoughts become less frequent and less intense. Once I start thinking a little more clearly, I started talking to my lawyers about my situation. It takes me 2 weeks and 3 lawyers to find one who says he knows how to help. But that if my mother is going to be uncooperative, it's almost certainly going to court, which makes the price spike dramatically. I can't afford that, so he suggests if the worst were to happen, it would be in my best interest to declare bankruptcy. So I asked my roommate to help me talk to my mum one last time. I tell my mum that I've been talking to lawyers, tell her again that she could lose 2 houses if she didn't remove her name, tell her that it could result in my bankruptcy. No, she won't remove her name. She starts crying in despair and anger. I shouldn't be blaming everything bad in my life on her, she says. There are things more important than money, she says, and why do I keep attacking her like this, she asks. So I finally concede. The only thing that I would feel comfortable doing that will keep her name on the deed and allow us to keep this house is if she sold her current house for as much as she can muster and then take over the mortgage I've been paying off. I would take my name off anything connected to her or this house and walk away from a home I had created after 4 years of work and over $5,000 invested in repairs alone. I don't even know what more to say at this point. Thank God I have people in my life who love me, because after all this is done, my mum would have lost the last person she had. Wow. What do you guys make of that story? That is so incredibly sad that you've had to walk away after all that. But I would love to know what your thoughts on that story. How would you guys deal with a situation like that? Let me know in the comments below. And as mentioned, guys, if you are new here and do enjoy these Reddit stories, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe button, and maybe, just maybe, even that notification bell. Thank you once again for being here. Take care now, and I hope you have a great Christmas. Take care.